Are feared dead after a bus fell into a deep gorge in western India. So far, nearly a dozen bodies have been recovered. The bus was carrying 34 employees from an agricultural university when it plunged off that mountain road. Officials say at least one man survived because he jumped out of the bus. As it turns out, India has some of the world's deadliest roads. You know that more than 110,000 people are killed on Indian roads every year.
Breaking news, Pope Francis reportedly making what is seen as an unprecedented move, effectively stripping the retired former Archbishop of Washington, D.C., Theodore McCarrick, of his cardinal's title. McCarrick faces sexual abuse allegations and had already offered to resign from the College of Cardinals. Kitty Logan in London has more.
Hi, Alicia. Well, the Pope formally accepted the resignation on Saturday. And of course, the Cardinal is one of the most prominent in the American Catholic Church. The Vatican says a resignation letter from Cardinal McCarrick was received on Friday. Historical allegations of sexual abuse dating back more than 50 years first surfaced in June. One man claims McCarrick abused him when he was a teenager, and another man alleges McCarrick forced him into an abusive relationship when he was just 11. The Catholic Church has been tainted by sex abuse scandals in the past and is now determined to clean up its image. The Vatican says the Pope wants to send a strong message that sexual abuse will not be tolerated.
What this means is that no matter how important your position, no matter how prestigious, when it comes to sex abuse, you are going to be held accountable.
Pope Francis has for now ordered McCarrick to go into seclusion for a life of prayer while the allegations are looked into. He will initially remain as a priest. The Cardinal denies the initial allegation, saying he has no recollection of it, but there will be a full investigation and ultimately a trial held by the Catholic Church. Alicia.
Thank you, Kitty Logan in London.
And coming up, California officials will be giving an update on the developing situation there. Those deadly fires continue to race out of control. We will have the very latest coming up in the next hour here on the Fox News Channel.
We begin with a Fox News alert. Raging wildfires in California claiming 3 more lives as President Trump issues an emergency declaration for the state. Thousands forced to evacuate as fast-moving flames destroy hundreds of buildings and threaten countless more. Hello and welcome to a brand new hour inside America's news headquarters. I'm Alicia Acuna in for Arthel Neville.
Hello, Alicia. Good to have you with us this evening.
Good to be here.
And good to have you tonight with us here on the Fox News Channel. Hello, I'm Eric Shawn. Well, the largest fire has been burning up north. That's near the city of Redding. That's where the family of a missing 70-year-old woman and her 2 great-grandchildren, well, that family are confirming that they were killed in the fire, bringing the death toll so far to 5. A firefighter and a private bulldozer operator were killed fighting the infernos earlier this week. And the raging fires have sent homeowners, well, understandably scrambling for safety.
I miss home, and I'm hoping that nobody else loses their house or their life.
That certainly is the thought tonight there, and Jeff Paul is on the scene in Idlewild, California. So, Jeff, what's the latest on the fire there?
Well, yeah, Eric, authorities just updated us on the car fire up in Northern California, telling us that it is split into 3 different branches as it continues to burn near the city of Redding. They say that it's showing right now no signs of slowing down. In fact, they believe that conditions might be getting worse and that the wind gusts are remaining very strong. 80,000 acres burned so far with only 5% containment in Redding. The fire has destroyed 500 structures and 5,000 right now are being threatened. Crews say no matter how many times they have fought fires in the past, even veteran firefighters say they have never seen anything quite like the car fire.
I've spoken to folks that have much more experience and been going through this stuff from year to year. Every single person that I've talked to so far has made the mention that I don't know why it's doing what it's doing. Uphill, downhill, even if it doesn't have a strong wind on it, it's burning as if it's got a Santa Ana wind or a strong 60 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour wind.
Now, one of the law enforcement officials who spoke during that recent press conference said that he's received about a dozen or so reports of looting. As a result, they're going to be beefing up security in the Redding area where that fire is currently burning. Eric?
Yeah, that's astounding that people take advantage of the situation by looting. I mean, really. Meanwhile, what's going on where you are?
Yeah, we're down here in the southern area of California, and as they take a look off to the side of it, you can probably hear it overhead. Helicopters right now flying above us as they go to dump water on some of those active fires. The Cranston fire right now, 17% contained, but within the last few hours or so, we've definitely started to feel the wind gusts out here pick up. The firefighters say they're very concerned about that because of these dry, hot conditions. Anytime those embers start to go airborne, it can cause even more fires. But we should also mention, as we come back out here live, that the folks who live in this area are very appreciative of the efforts from both firefighters and law enforcement out here. We passed by one restaurant that was giving out free meals. They're just trying to make sure that those officials out here, those authorities, have at least a few minutes of peace when they take a break, which, as you can imagine, they haven't been taking many of them out here, Eric.
Yeah, it is really a tough, arduous, and grueling duty, especially in those temperatures. Jeff, thank you. Alicia?
And Eric, for more on how the dry conditions out west are affecting firefighters' efforts, we turn to Adam Klotz in the Fox Extreme Weather Center. Adam.
Just incredibly dry out there, really across the entire West. Now, yes, we're talking about California, areas where some of these bigger fires are, but take a look at this. Each one of these individual fire icons, this is a fire of greater than 100 acres, 76 of them burning currently, some of them continuing to grow as we're looking at still dangerous fire weather conditions here in the next couple of days. Anywhere you're looking here in the highlighted red area, that's a red flag warning, which means that the humidity is really low, the conditions are hot, and on top of that, there's enough wind to add concern for some of these fires spreading right in the Redding area. Spots where we're seeing some of these larger fires continue to be in that red flag warning, now stretching to the north with an area in southern Oregon and areas in Washington as well. Farther off towards the east, really a large area there through portions of Nevada, stretching up into Colorado. All spots where there currently are fires burning now and will continue to spread, unfortunately, due to some of these weather conditions. Besides just being dry, it is also incredibly hot, which adds to this. Heat advisories will continue here the next couple of days. Everything you're looking at here stretching down from portions of Southern California, stretching over to Nevada, and then running all the way up the West Coast. These are advisories, watches, warnings. Some of these spots getting up to feels like temperatures of triple digits to 105. Warm it up that it's dangerous enough to be outside already. And then with dry conditions, that only adds for the possibility some of these fires to spread here in the next couple of days. What kind of temperatures are we talking about? Well, for today's forecasted highs, Phoenix is going to get up to 108, but you do notice spots there in Southern California, Death Valley, always a hot spot, getting up to 122 degrees. Other areas, some of those larger fires in Northern California, up to 109 degrees today in Redding, staying dry. That continues for us into Sunday also, as temperatures again running right up there close to 109, 110 degrees. That lingers also into our Monday. Unfortunately, that's going to be continuing here the next several days. And it's not just that area that's dealing with hot conditions, also dealing with dry conditions. Now, here in the afternoon hours, we have seen some showers pop up in some of these mountainous areas, but they're up and down California, some of these areas where the fires are the biggest. Alicia, unfortunately, it's staying dry and will be so here at least for a little while longer.
Yeah, Adam, the West just does not get a break, and we're just in July. Thank you so much, Adam Klotz. Eric.
Alicia, the possible remains of 55 American service members have been released by North Korea and will soon be on their way home to American soil. Vice President Mike Pence saying in an exclusive interview with Fox News' Maria Bartiromo that he will travel to Hawaii next week to attend that very special and important repatriation ceremony.
And the fact that this president, sitting down with Kim Jong-un to negotiate the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, also had our fallen heroes on his heart, should tell you everything you need to know about President Donald Trump. And my wife and I are deeply moved and deeply honored to be able to be there when we bring our boys home.
Brian Yennis now live in our New York City newsroom with more on this. I mean, Brian, this is just so deeply meaningful, especially for the families of those who've been MIA, missing all these many decades.
Yeah, it really is, Eric. And, last month, by sending 55 cases with the remains of U.S. troops who died in the Korean War, well, President Trump yesterday, actually, well, he said this is a sign that their summit was a success. And, well, yesterday, a C-17 landed in North Korea to pick up these remains, which landed at Osan Air Base in South Korea. And the cases were draped with UN flags and were met with military honors. More than 36,000 Americans died on the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Of those, 7,699 are still listed as missing in action. 5,300 are believed to still be on North Korean soil. And yesterday's ceremonial handover of remains came on the 65th anniversary of the end of the Korean War, an especially important and poignant day for veterans.
There's no two ways about it. If a military personnel dies or perishes in another land fighting for a cause, he should be brought home. No matter what it costs, what consequences, should be brought home.
And Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, Eric, said it is absolutely under consideration for U.S. military personnel to actually go into North Korea for the first time in years to conduct search missions for remains.
Wow, that would absolutely be amazing if that indeed does happen. We hope it does. Meanwhile, what's the next step for these possible remains?
Well, look, they're going to be flown to Hawaii to be tested at a forensic laboratory in Hawaii, and Vice President Mike Pence will be there for the repatriation ceremony on August 1st. And Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said this about the testing, quote, "We have no indication that there's anything amiss, but we don't know. We can't confirm yet one way or another. That's why we go through all the forensics." Last year I visited Dover Air Force Base, where much of this DNA is tested to help identify the remains of Korean War veterans who are missing in action. And now during DNA testing, they will take the DNA of remains and compare it to a data bank. But for a lot of these 7,699 soldiers missing in action, there is no DNA for them to compare. So officials are using family members, brothers, sisters, even second, third cousins. They're using their DNA of fallen to help to really compare, to help identify these other missing soldiers. So thanks to advancements made in DNA testing since 2010, they are identifying more and more remains thanks to DNA samples that are coming from these extended family members. Eric?
Yeah, it is just so wonderful that the Pentagon continues that effort. Brian, thank you. Alicia?
And Eric, for more on this, Lieutenant Don Bramer joins us now. He's a former Navy intelligence officer and Iraq War veteran. Lieutenant, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you very much for your service. Before we get into the nitty-gritty about this, I wanted to ask you one question because you do have some expertise in this. I noticed that there weren't American flags draped over these cases. Can you explain why that is?
Well, what you saw were NATO flags across the cases, and the reason for that is not only did U.S. forces fight in North Korea and South Korea, but also our allies. So until we go through the arduous task of doing the testing, we don't know. These could be U.S. forces, these could be Korean, or they could be our allies.
Okay, makes sense. Now, this move by the North Koreans, it hits at the hearts of Americans. To see something many of these families of the fallen soldiers never thought they'd see, but what does it do in terms of relations with the United States when what this country is asking for, this country, is denuclearization? How does this help?
Well, it's a good first step. I mean, in any relationship, you have to build a rapport. You have to test the water, if you will. So it's a lot about trust, which is give and take. You know, the first thing that we did was we stopped our exercises. Then the next step was that there was no more testing by the North Koreans. Third step, now we're getting the remains back. So let's see if it continues to build. Let's go through a slow step, process by process, and see if we can finally get to that point.
Now, President Trump thanked North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for, a quote, fulfilling a promise, and that he is sure that Kim will continue to fulfill his promises. Is the president putting himself out there with a leadership that at best has shown itself to be one that is not to be trusted?
Well, as was said previously, it takes a lot of steps to build trust. I think the president is doing some very good steps here. I think the best part here is for everyone to remain positive. I mean, it's a good thing. Let's take this for what it is. You know, 55 cases came back to U.S. soil. I think that's something we should celebrate. Let's look at this for what it is and be happy about that, especially for the family members of the fallen.
Now, the president's rhetoric on North Korea has made members of both parties very nervous internationally. Before the meeting in Singapore, no one really knew what to think. There were concerns for sure. I want you to take a listen to what the president has to say about that.
I think a lot of good things are going to happen. And without that rhetoric, and without the sanctions, and without all the other things that we've been doing, nothing could have happened. Now you read where they're dismantling nuclear areas. They've already blown up some nuclear areas. They took down all of the propaganda that was all over North Korea.
Lieutenant, your thoughts on that?
Well, we've certainly come a long way from the tweets of a little rocket man, so let's be proud of that. But it's steps. I think the rhetoric works, but I think most importantly, the sanctions work. You know, Kim's economy, his country, you know, they're hurting. The sanctions are working. It's a need that he needs to reach out to not only the U.S., but to our allies to see how he can improve the life of his fellow citizens.
But as you know, Pyongyang has a very established history of going down what appears to be a diplomatic road, only to kind of vanish and return to its threatening ways. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently said that Americans need to be patient when it comes to diplomacy, but that the United States won't let it drag on forever. What is the message there to Pyongyang and denuclearization, and how will the U.S. back up those words if things do drag on?
Well, if things continue to drag on, I think you will see an increase in the sanctions. But I also think we need to be patient. You know, if you think just yesterday, the 65th anniversary of the armistice, just to get to the armistice, that took 188 meetings, 2.5 years just to get to that. If you go back to the denuclearization and the INF treaties with the Soviet Union, that took nearly a decade. We have to be patient here. Things like that do not happen overnight, and I think we should allow the process to take its step. Trust the people that work at the State Department and the Pentagon and all the staffers who are working continuously behind the scenes to get us to that next step.
And are you expecting the North Koreans to ask for anything in return for returning the remains of these 55 service members? Should we be cautious and see this as maybe a negotiating tool?
Absolutely, it's a negotiating tool, and who knows what they have already asked for. You know, during that private meeting between the president and Kim Jong, there could have been already discussions made. There's been many meetings since then, so maybe this has already been done. Let's look at the steps, let it happen. I'm sure it's a negotiating tool, and why wouldn't he? I think we would do the exact same thing if we were in his spot.
And these 55 cases, they're just a portion of what's still there. The United States is still needing so much more. Do you have hope that we're actually going to be able to retrieve those other service members?
I think we should always have hope. You know, as a young sailor, when I was enlisted, I had the privilege of being an honor guard, of being part of the ceremonies that laid our fallen to rest, whether they were from active duty, injury, or family members. I think that closure is so important as we bring our family members home, that you have to have hope. And I think, you know, that final piece of putting their loved ones to rest is so important. So I think hope is there. You know, you're right. We have more than 5,000 remains still missing just in North Korea. You know, maybe we can send some of our folks from Pearl Harbor down there to do some more investigations. But for the families who lost those loved ones, let's give them hope and hope that we can do this.
Very good point. Lieutenant Don Bramer, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alicia.
Alicia, flames ripped through a motel overnight, leaving one family gripped in unimaginable grief. What we're now learning about that deadly fire. Plus, President Trump, he's planning to hit the road to help Republicans in the upcoming midterms. So will his strategy work or potentially backfire in the districts that Hillary Clinton won? We'll take a look at the political prognostications straight ahead when we return.